I'm delighted to be hosting you all today.
Okay, thank you. I'm recording? Is that
Yeah,
what
that's
this is?
the recording.
So I'm Martin Halbert. I'm Dean of Libraries at the University of North Texas. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, who I advocated for very hard, and he wants me to plug this on. How's that?
Thank
Good? Okay. Brian Hocker is Vice President for Digital Media Production and Research at NBC5 KXAS in Dallas-Fort Worth. And let me tell you why I was so interested in having Brian come talk to this group. And a little bit about the background of our relationship at University of North Texas with NBC5. So the NBC5 KXAS, it's important to understand the history of it in Texas. It's the oldest television station in Texas and one of the oldest in the country, and has a really long, rich body of material that it's reported on over the decades of its existence since the early 50s. Brian has been instrumental. Well, I'll tell you about our relationship in a minute. First, let me give you a little bit about Brian, because he has a great background for informing this discussion. Brian has been involved in a lot of different efforts nationally over the years. He was, let me just use my cheat notes here, he was the president of the American Marketing Association. Also, he was a former member of the Nielsen Company's National Policy Guidelines Committee, which, if you know anything about it, advises on policies and practice for the television ratings industry. Brian thinks big, and he thinks about innovative kinds of practices. When NBC acquired Telemundo, the Spanish television network, Brian was the one that implemented and integrated it into all the Texas markets. He also really thinks a lot about new media and new approaches to the news. He has led the company's efforts in things like TV Everywhere and Sony View, the Cozy TV effort most recently. And we got to know Brian at UNT recently when he approached us and said, well, look, and he'll give you some more background, I think, about the history of this project. But I first was introduced to him by our archive staff, who said, wow, there's this incredible opportunity for UNT to be the archive and the place to provide access to this decades of material from NBC5. And I said, wow, well, how did this come about? And they said, well, there's this great guy there, Brian Hocker, who really understands cultural legacy, cultural memory, and really wants to talk to us as a partner. And when I met Brian, I was immediately struck by his knowledge of both the network news, but also really his understanding of the broad issues in preserving access to the legacy of the news. So with that, let me turn it over to Brian, and he'll talk a little bit about a lot of different things with us.
Thank you.
I guess he wants you to clip that.
Okay. All right, well, if nothing else, Martin, I feel much better about myself this morning. Thank you for that. Clem, how are we doing here? You got me? Okay. Thank you very, very much for that kind introduction. I will tell you, if you had asked me in January of this year where I might be speaking over the course of 2015, speaking to a group of academics, librarians, I'm not even sure what you call yourselves, would not have come to mind. But nevertheless, here I am. I will tell you, I'm a bit intimidated. I'm a little bit nervous. It was nice that Catherine said we're not experts. None of us are experts. I'm certainly not an expert in your field, but with the support of Catherine and Martin and Edward McCain, I must tell you, who I spoke to a couple of times on the phone, here I stand before you. I'm probably relieved you don't have coffee, so you can't ask me too many questions. But with that, what I think I'm told what would be most helpful is if I just relate to you the story of how our archive, NBC5 KXAS in Dallas-Fort Worth, has ended up at UNT. I'm very proud of the history of the station, which Martin was alluding to. So I want to share that with you. You can relax through that. And then segue into this problem I realized that we had and wanted to preserve, and how we got it to make its way to UNT. And then leave you with just a few thoughts which are, probably perhaps mundane and redundant to you, but anyway, they were enlightening to me because, again, this isn't my field. So does that sound okay? Okay, well that's good, because if you had said no, I'd be in big trouble. So with that, somewhere I brought a slide thing here. There we go. So this is NBC, this is WBAP TV, which signed on the air in 1948. It was We Bring a Program. How uncreative is that? That they came up for the call letters. The founder of the station was a gentleman by the name of Amon G. Carter. I'm curious, have any of you heard of him? Yeah. Okay, you have. So, and I don't know if that's through North Texas or where, but Amon G. Carter was just the perfect spokesperson. He was one of these guys, he was all about Fort Worth, and I will specify Fort Worth. He was not about Dallas. The legend goes that when he would go to Dallas for a business meeting, he would carry a sack lunch because he didn't want to patronize the establishment in Dallas. That was just Amon Carter. Friend of presidents, he was a West Texas oil man, pretty much credited with founding Texas Tech University. I guess I said he was the owner and publisher of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He brought those Telegram and the Star together in a merger. He owned the city, if you will. And in 1948, he decided he wanted one of those television things and got his people to build him one in Fort Worth. We were built to serve the Fort Worth community, which I think was typical back there in the 40s and 50s. We carried the NBC television network. We've always been an NBC affiliate, producing quality, local, live entertainment programming. So, and I got to tell you, when you have feel-good moments, I got here late yesterday because of the storms in Dallas, and I just wanted to see this room and make sure this would work. So I get down here, and Jane Johnson is, in fact, who's helping us, as was pointed out before. She's our library person. She sees this slide and says, "I've been there." And I said, "You're kidding." So I stopped down everything. So she grew up in Dallas, left at a relatively early age, but her mother brought she and her sisters, she said she thought they'd be the next Lennon sisters, 3 sisters, to the station to appear live on a Johnny Hay, a telecast. This morning, Jane greeted me at the door. Is Jane in the room?
I think she went to put out the...
That's good. I want to make sure I wasn't...
She's taking care of so much in the background. Everybody deserves... She deserves hugs from everybody in the room. Well,
obviously for me, she's a great lady. She brought me a picture of she and her 2 sisters in front of WBAP. So I have it on my iPhone. I'm sorry I can't work it into the presentation. I just did work it into the presentation. Just not the picture.
See, that's the value of a librarian. She can find that picture.
Yeah. There you go. Excellent. Excellent example. So we've always been an NBC affiliate. In '98, we were purchased by the network. The network owns 10 stations across the country in relatively major markets. Dallas-Fort Worth is now the 5th largest media market in the country. We also own and operate 17 Telemundo stations in some of those markets, and that's the case in Dallas-Fort Worth. So I'm involved with the operation of NBC and Telemundo in North Texas. Jane pointed out to me, she said, you know, that was live programming back then. They didn't have any way to record it. And I had that in my notes today, which, as many of you know, that was the case. Live programming, there wasn't the tape technology. It was not filmed, so it was, we used to bring, this happens to be the Clydesdales coming through our studio. We used, when the circus came to town, come off the train and through the television studio, live on the air so everyone knew it was in town. So that's the type of stuff, that my station did. Several of us are very proud of that. I said we've had multiple owners through the years. Several of us have stuck around and really love the history of WBAP. You know, the other thing about the building is, I point this out to some youth today who come on tours, and I'll point out later, we just left this building, but this building was built to send moving pictures through the air. Okay? What a concept, all right? I mean, I can pick up my iPhone, take a picture of this group today, and it can be around the world in a second. So that's often lost, I think, on the youth of today. But this building, in 1948, it was the idea that we can send moving pictures through the air. So I think that's pretty cool. We signed on September 27, 1948, 2 days before our FCC authorization. I would lose my job if we did something like that. That happened because Harry Truman was coming to Fort Worth for a whistle-stop tour on his campaign. And Amon Carter said, Amon Carter, huge Democrat, I want that man on my television station, fire the sucker up. And we did that. I talk about that like I was there. You know, hopefully you realize I wasn't there. I'm into this history stuff. So we got Harry Truman on the air on September 27th, 2 days before we were supposed to. So we've had a lot of things through the ages that have been interesting that have happened at the station. I thought I would share with you one from November of '63. And Rochelle, if we can change the lights here, and let's all say a short prayer, see if this plays. Just a short clip. Thanks, Rochelle.
That then, in brief, is the situation. We're waiting here in the basement with other reporters, cameramen, photographers, police, FBI agents for Lee Oswald, accused killer of President Kennedy, of a Dallas police officer, charged with the attempted murder of Texas Governor John Connally. He will be transferred very shortly from here to the Dallas County Jail. Let me have it. I want it. Being let out by Captain Fritz. There is the prisoner. There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's a man with a gun. It's absolute panic. Absolute panic here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. Detectives have their guns drawn. Oswald has been shot. There is no question about it. Oswald has been shot. Pandemonium has broken loose here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters.
That was in fact a WBAP camera person who was operating the pool feed that day back in November of 1963. It was a network correspondent that you saw there talking. And of course we have the front of that and the back of that. It's very fascinating and valuable stuff to our culture. And I'm sure you know that many believe that weekend, changed the course of history for many of us, and certainly broadcast news, television history. The networks were on the air for 72 hours straight that weekend. I believe it was the first time they were on for that extended period of time. So it's just WBAP was a part of that, then. Local stations experimented with the news back when we were signing on in the late 40s and the early 50s. At WBAP, we developed the Texas News. It was a newsreel format where we sent photographers and reporters into the field, and the photographers would use 16mm film, shoot that, bring it back to the facility. We had a processing plant in the back, process the film that afternoon, and then splice it together into stories that were then read by anchors on air. The early newsreels were anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes generally. Most of them did not have sound with them. It was the anchors again reading over the newsreels. So, for us, these newsreels, which there you can see some of them, were dropped into a cardboard box. The scripts that the anchors read, right? So it was the actual paper, the newsprint, it was typed on newsprint, were filed chronologically in metal file cabinets in another part of this room. The film was not placed in canisters. Most were labeled with the date. You can see here 1967 on that one, on the end of the film to fasten it. This went on until the 1970s, the late 1970s, and until we began to convert to digital tape, not digital tape, right? To tape, a tape format. UNT estimates that there are approximately 10,000 reels of film like this and 219,000 pages of scripts. It was all stored in the basement. The station was built with the basement, which is something pretty unique to our part of the country, actually. The film was shelved in it was a relatively dark room. It survived. It survived the Texas heat. It survived some random building fires, not to scare you, but some other various things that happened over the years. In 2013, KXAS was kind of at a crossroads. So we had been in the same facility now for 65 years in 2013. And obviously the rate of technological change, every time we needed to upgrade the building, it was becoming increasingly costly to do that, to remodel it, to take on the new technology. It was just becoming run down as well. Geographical location was a factor too. This building was located in East Fort Worth. Of course, the market has just exploded in North Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth. Our viewing area is now 32 counties of North Texas. We operated a 16,000 square foot office over in Dallas for years. I had a news bureau out of there and a sales force. It was time to combine the facilities, build a new state-of-the-art facility, and we did that actually just south of DFW Airport. We started that process in late 12 and moved into there in November of 13. Is that right? Yes, November of 13. So we were leaving this building behind. So, what to do with the film? As I began to scope out the extent of the project, a couple of things became clearer to me. It was going to be extremely costly to properly store the film and tape in a new location, were we to go that route. We didn't want to dedicate space in the new facility and more or less just transport the problem, if you will, along with us. In fact, the new facility actually utilizes overall less space, just uses it more efficiently, right, than the old place. There are archivists at NBC who help us with document retention and things such as that. They put me in touch with our outside vendor, happens to be Iron Mountain, if you're familiar with them, the third party. The estimate that I got from them just for our videotape, let alone the film, was to me astronomical as a broadcast TV operator. It was going to hit the station's P&L. There was just no way we were going to go there and work with an outside vendor like that to keep our videotape. Similarly, it was going to be costly and time-consuming to get our film into a usable format, which I know some of you are obviously very familiar with that. I reached out to NBC News Archives. Have any of you worked with NBC News Archives? Okay, they need to market themselves better. Anyway, NBC News Archives does the archiving for and the marketing of network news footage, MSNBC and CNBC. They're based in New York. They were very helpful to me in letting me understand the process by which we would need to go through to convert the film into a usable format. They were most valuable to me. And you know, the other thing is I thought, that I was a little tentative in going to them because, you know, a bunch of us knew about this, but in some ways it was our little secret. I was tentative in going to them because I was afraid they would say, well, you know what, just send it up here. Their deep storage is over in New Jersey, literally in a warehouse there. I have seen this, and I thought if I send that film up to New Jersey, this Texan will never see it again. You know, it will be gone forever. They didn't say that. They didn't ask for that, but they did say one very important thing to me. They said, you can't let that get thrown away, which is, I guess, obvious. It was valuable, though, politically for me within the company to have the archive say that because I knew I had a pretty long path through the bureaucracy of NBC, if you will. Strike that Clem from the tape, please. Gotta remember what I'm saying here. So, you know, the bureaucracy of a large organization, because I could see people over the course of that path just saying, well, just get rid of this stuff or discard it. But having NBC News Archives buy-in early on, I felt was important to the process. So I've explained it was going to be costly to store and digitize. It's fair to ask, and I've been asked this, would there be an opportunity to make money from the material once it was digitized? We have an arrangement with NBC News Archives where they currently can license our footage on our behalf, and we split revenue 50-50 with them. Outside the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination, which I was around for, which was just 2 years ago, the requests for local footage primarily come from, I'm going to call crime drama type shows. It's producers looking for the sensationalistic murders that have happened in North Texas through the years. That's where most of our requests come from. The revenue we realize from requests such as that is really very negligible. And frankly, the cost per hassle of finding the footage, getting it transferred, and screeners and things like that, it's not worth our while, I feel. Now, of course, digitizing the assets would theoretically would lower our cost, I should say, of retrieving them, but still pretty insignificant. I want to briefly take a side route here to make a point with possibly a real-life example. Now, we have nearly 65 years, and Rochelle, if you would, bring the lights down again. We have nearly 65 years of footage that I've told you, you know, at various points in our archives. The JFK assassination, Delta 191, which is an airplane crash in the 1980s. The Branch Davidians, most of you probably remember that. That was in Waco, Texas. We covered that extensively. The Columbia Space Shuttle, upon re-entry, started to break up over the eastern part of our DMA, a very, very dramatic and tragic day for many of us. This happens to be from a midday newscast in 2002. I want to play for you. Watch carefully. You know what? Hold on a second. Sorry, Rochelle, I may have jumped again. Yeah, let's play that. You know what? That's where I want to be, obviously. Okay.
I know it as a chicken snake. This is probably the most notorious snake in the Metroplex. But
can I find this in Arlington?
Oh, good grief, yes.
Oh boy. Let's see how long it is. Let's hold it out.
This guy is probably close to 5 feet. Texas rat snakes are going to be one of the largest snakes that you find in the Metroplex area.
What the f is this? Get this thing off me, man. Get this thing off me, man. God dang. What is this thing jumping at me for, man?
He likes you.
Yeah, I can tell.
There you go. There you go. It never fails. It never fails to get a laugh. You know, you're like, do I risk showing that? No, it never fails. So that happened live on TV. It was on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. the subsequent 4 nights after that. Oprah Winfrey has licensed that clip for her show. It has been on innumerable blooper shows. The Japanese had a run on American blooper video for years, probably licensed it 12 times to Japan. I just think that's a fascinating example of, you got that 65 years, I've told you some of the events in history, and that's what people have come to us with. Okay, that's a true story. So the value of the archive, again, to me, as a business person, I think is minuscule in the dollars and cents sense. We'll talk a bit about other ways that I might realize value from it. And in my momentary panic here of that not playing, let me get back on track with what I want to talk about. Yeah, so you kind of got a preview of these slides. All right. So this leads me to an observation. As you go about, and some of you may not be in this particular area, but if you are again going and approaching folks like a television station, that's what I know, so that's the example I want to use today, like ours, what's the value proposition for the donor, in this case NBC5? If what I say is true, and a station's not able to recognize significant economic value from old tape and film, you might be able to acquire the footage for little to no cost, and that's obviously a good thing for you. If the stations don't perceive economic value in the material, it could be difficult to get us to focus on the material. That, I think, is a challenge for you, right? So I don't perceive a lot of value in it. You've got to take my attention away from something else to get me to face the issue. If a station doesn't see a payoff, why would it engage? Outsiders need to understand the business operating cycle for a television station is extremely short. And by that I mean we're in the daily news factory business, right? We come in the morning, we produce news, and we leave the day, at the end of the day. Even our revenue cycle, the advertisers, place buys with us 3 to 6 months out. We operate on a very short cycle. Quite unlike, I think, the type of things that we're talking about today, which have a very long tail, very long term. So it's just a different mindset, if you will, and I think something you want to keep in mind. I became focused on the basement because we were about to move, as I explained to you, in 2013. And I was determined not to let the film disappear. So let me talk a bit about how we found a partner. Because of the Kennedy assassination connection, the 6th floor museum in Dallas, how many of you are familiar with the 6th floor? It's a great institution dedicated to the assassination and everything about it. They had approached us about acquiring our library. This is interesting. A former employee works with the 6th floor museum. And he was semi-familiar with what we had in the basement. They're a small organization, laser-focused on the assassination, and somehow the breadth of our collection, or what I thought was there, again, I'm not sure what's there, I just know there's a bunch of reels of film, didn't feel like the right fit for the 6th floor museum. I sought out several local universities and spoke to them about the film. There was some curiosity, a bit of back and forth, but overall, nothing really caught hold with them. There wasn't great follow-up. Until we got to UNT, frankly. But how we got to UNT was a bit indirect, and I think worth sharing with you. I mentioned the station founder was Amon Carter, very successful businessman, died in 1955. He left, obviously, a great deal of wealth, not obviously, but he did leave a great deal of wealth and set up a foundation, the Amon Carter Foundation, which to this day supports many local institutions, including an art museum. I went to them, the executive director of that foundation, partly out of respect for Amon Carter, because in a way it was his material that was in our basement, to say that we're at this crossroads, I've got to do something with this. I'm told it's very costly to convert it. Do you have any ideas? He was a fantastic contact. He was a great guy. He brainstormed with us, and eventually, it didn't take him too long, he had supported an effort at UNT and funded some efforts there with the portal to Texas history. And he said, I think you might want to talk with these people. And he put me in contact with Martin's group. The university archivists and their assistant dean for external relations visited the station. Library staff, surveyed the material and gave us the first real estimates I had of the quantity we had there. And more specifically, what it would take to put it into a usable format. At this same time, the Portal to Texas History celebrated, Martin, was its 1 million? Yeah, the 1 million digitization of a newspaper page, I believe, at the university. And they invited me there, and it was my first time to get inside the facility and building to see what they were doing. I'll give you kind of what may seem like a trivial example, but it was very real, and I know it helped me in my process to partner with UNT. We had these log books through the years, probably stood about this high, legal size sheets, typewritten, that show by newscast what was on the air that day, sitting in the corner of the basement. When we would get a request from true crime drama or what have you, we would need the date to go into those log books to kind of backtrack to where that material was in our facility. We could not search by the murderer's name or things such as that, right? Had to go to the date. So I knew if I could get that digitized in a searchable format, it would be usable to us. But the idea of sending this delicate stuff down to a FedEx store on the corner and having some high school kid, you know, after school, taking it apart and digitizing this, I just couldn't exactly get my head around that. But when I went to this reception at UNT, they took me into this room where, I mean, geez, they're taking 19th century Texas maps and digitizing on a large board. It really connected it for me. Well, geez, those people could handle my lousy logbooks from the 1970s. You know, so again, a simple thing, but a really important connection for me that helped me buy in on what UNT was doing. The other thing, frankly, was none of us, when we started at the station, were familiar with what the Portal to Texas History is. How many of you are familiar with the Portal to Texas History? Okay, but we got to change that before this is over. We'll get all of you, but we weren't familiar at the station with what that is, but Martin's staff introduced me to the portal. I mean, if you're a history buff at all, it's just extremely fascinating. And I was able to envision how our digitized content could appear there. Granted, it still seemed like a daunting task, but the station, I realized, wouldn't simply be a beta test for some university project. This was an established portal, an established website that had meaning. Members of the library staff came out and gave the first good assessment I had ever seen of how much material we had. They also explained in detail how they would bring staff to pack, label, and inventory everything, most of it before it left the building. They even had a mover in mind that they wanted to use. Basically, I mean, they made it so turnkey for me that all I had to do was shoot B-roll as the stuff went out of the building, which was just terrific. Well, it was becoming increasingly clear to me that we had probably found a wonderful new home for the archives. The task of a legal agreement kind of loomed in front of me. Now, I've done hundreds of business agreements over the years, but never one for a situation like this. So, I mentioned earlier about my discussion with NBC News Archives. I was grateful that they had acknowledged the value of the archive and not to get rid of it. But it also came with another very direct statement. Don't give up the copyright. So, I was not surprised at all by this. I mean, we all cherish our copyrights, and in broadcasting we try and protect them, you know, very well. So it wasn't a surprise, But yet, again, I don't deal in the archive world, in the university world. I'm thinking, wow, I'm not sure if I can even ask this from the university, right? So I was a bit nervous going into the discussion with them, but I knew if they were okay with that, I thought it was really downhill from there. Well, in fact, they very quickly said they were okay with that. I walked away from that conversation, and I said, geez, to myself, geez, Brian, they got like tens of thousands of books in there, which they don't own the copyright to. What were you thinking when you walked in there? You know, may not be a big deal. So anyway, we retain the copyright to the material. The University of Texas owns the physical assets. They have the right to produce, publish, and present anything out of there for works that they create, and they retain the copyright to those works. Also, and I don't know if this is unique, again, I don't know if there are this many examples, but UNT may act as a licensing agent for the material. That's part of the deal. And again, it goes back to the cost per hassle I've experienced in this part of the business. I understand, interestingly, we got our first inquiry from Neiman Marcus, who in 1967, apparently their premier gift in the Christmas catalog was a camel, a live camel. And they have reason to believe that WBAP was on site that December giving away the camel. And they're interested in licensing. And I'm thinking, Neiman Marcus, perfect. Yes, I'd like to negotiate fees with them. Jointly, and this is just in good faith, we will be fundraising partners moving forward as part of the agreement, which leads me kind of to the next area. Well, let's see here. I'm telling you, I was very nervous. I wrote all this out, and I should have just relaxed. But now I got to get my points out of here. I don't have an outline. All right. We can wrap this up in about 7 minutes away. So, our publicity plan. We decided to focus on 1 week, happened to be in January. Good high viewership levels, holidays are over, January of this past year. UNT, I really wanted them to be the focus. They were in charge of this. I was consulting. You can tell I have some strong opinions, so I won't say that I didn't drive some of this, you know, but we worked very well with the university. What do you call that office? Press office or whatever. So this was a press release on the website, but also, you know, in paper that went out that they produced. Down here, UNT had a specific landing page that told about the collection and tied into the portal to Texas History, where the collection actually resides. You can also make a personal donation, which I hope you're giving me a list. We'll have everyone here, I hope, makes a personal donation. Your little part to digitizing the film archive from this page. We established a parallax page on NBCDFW.com, and this is an example of one of the packages we put together there. And then for the 7 nights of that week in January, this is one of our anchors. We did a story each night on the archive from a different angle. I should have said before we got here that we were dying to see what was in the archive, right? So UNT had a history professor who knew of an integration issue that had happened in 1956 in Mansfield, Texas, which is in the DMA, just outside Fort Worth. So he was aware of this, and there was reason to believe, and we had actually seen a little bit this before, that there was a video of this incident where the integration of a high school. So the university took some of their funds, sent off 4 weeks worth of film from August and September of 1967, digitized it, and it came back fantastic. I mean, pristine. I'm going to show you some of it. And we just got really pumped up then. And that's what we used. I went to the staff, I said, I want the eminent spokesperson on digitization, archiving. Who do we get? Let's get them on air. Dean Martin Halbert, right there. He introduced me. So Martin and I were on a show. We talked about the archive along with his archivist. I think, we're going to play, and I think I want to play this from here rather than my presentation. So what I'm going to show you now is we produced what I call, we produced a 4-minute sizzle reel because we wanted to start to approach funders, people to donate for the effort, and I thought we needed to put something together to go out and make those presentations. So I'm going to show you this now. It's a bit better, as you can imagine, on a monitor itself. Rochelle, if you'll take the lights down. Let's see if I have it.
This is history. A step back in time. A peek at the stories.
This is history. A step back in time. A peek at the stories that mattered to North Texans.
I saw the absence of liberty there. I saw the absence of complete religious freedom. I must admit I saw some signs of economic progress in Russia.
I want to see us work together for the future progress and glory of Texas.
A glance at what was unique.
Hello, Mabel. I'm talking to you from the first payphone in Texas. Boy, this thing is really an antique.
A closer look at what was important.
Therefore, for the immediate future, this board feels that any change is premature and instructs the superintendent of schools to continue a segregated school system for the school year 1956-57.
And for that reason, it is my honest, conscientious opinion that the board has waited too long and given too little.
Made any decision yet about the enrolling in the school here?
No, I haven't.
Do you know when you will decide?
Well, it'll probably be tonight.
From high school football games to visits from politicians and celebrities, these images bring history to life. From the early days of the Texas News, as produced by WBAP-TV, Texas' first television station. And this is just a glimpse at 4 weeks in 1956.
Well, the complete sheriff force of Denton County has all been working on it in the Fort Worth Sheriff Department, Dallas Sheriff Department, and the Department of Public Safety from Austin has about 4 men up here. Everybody is doing all they can to try to get some kind of a clue.
NBC5 and the University of North Texas have partnered to create the largest known online archive of historical local television news.
Of course, I think it'll be Dick Nixon. I never have thought otherwise, and I see no reason now.
As part of UNT's portal to Texas history, the WBAP KXAS collection will offer a complete archive containing 30 years of 16mm film, plus news scripts that provide valuable context for the captivating footage.
At John Peter Smith Hospital, Tarrant County Sheriff's officers question a man found unconscious after an apparent severe beating. He refuses to tell Deputy Bud Alexander who he is.
Digitization of more than 10,000 reels of film in various stages of decomposition must be done in a real-time process that requires costly cleaning and repair. Once complete, the video files will require 2.2 petabytes of digital storage. UNT Libraries is the only library in the Southwest with the technological capabilities to take on such a project. The streaming footage and original broadcast scripts will be text searchable and freely available online for individual and scholarly research. The Historical News Archive will be a rich source of teaching kindergarten through grade 12 throughout the state as well.
Providing leadership in innovation and learning.
The UNT libraries are an essential force in teaching and research, providing leadership in innovation and learning. NBC5 is proud to be Texas' first television station and continues to convey that today through the Texas Connects Us brand. NBC5 and UNT are honored to offer access to more than 30 years of the events, the stories, and the people that shape North Texas.
Had created and are using to go out and raise money for the project. The five nights of packages that we did for on air are available on the website. Really fascinating stuff. One was dedicated, and get now, this was from 4 weeks in 1956. We were able to pull together packages. One was dedicated to weather, another was dedicated to fashion, of course one was dedicated to the civil rights issue, and the fourth one was the future. There was the Texas State Fair was going on, so they had futuristic exhibits and things. We looked at that from 1956. And then the fifth one was just crazy things, which are always there, right? It's the Gecko video. So those are all on the website, and I have them with me if you want a really exciting date at dinner tonight. I can play that for you. So we're pleased with our success thus far. Working together, we've raised just over $500,000 on a project that UNT estimates will be $2.7 million to get everything converted, the film converted from the 3 decades. So in my final time, I thought I would offer my short list, and indeed short, and general observations about how if you had someone who wanted to work with an organization like mine in pursuit of preserving film, might consider. None of this is not rocket science because I came up with it, for one thing, but again, it's just my observations. My first thought is it's important to act before the crisis. I know I've seen that on Educopia's website. Secure the archive before a business goes under or vacates the premises, as was the case with me. We were vacating the premises, and that's partly how this came about. The real issue here, as I see it, is the worst time to be dealing with someone who has this material, right, is when they're focused on something else. The truth of the matter is, though, with all due respect to UNT, no one came and knocked on NBC5's door and said, what's in the basement, you know, or do you have this stuff? Well, you know, that's kind of a problem. I'm sure we're all working to uncover the assets. How might you do that with a television station? Well, I'm sure, you know, a lot of organizations, I mean, I know we have relationships on various levels with universities. It's internships, faculty experts speak on our shows. So we're plugged into universities in several different levels. You know, should the library folks, the archivists or whatever, also be checking in? Television station's a very simple organization, frankly, very flat organizational structure, and it doesn't take long to figure out what they have in the basement if you ask a couple of managers the right question. I say be a problem solver. You know, you can be incredibly valuable to the station. I mean, there I effectively had a problem. I wanted to preserve this stuff, but I also wanted to get it out. And UNT came in with what I'm calling a turnkey approach to help me do that. I mean, they were obviously doing the homework on their end to figure out what my needs were. So that's a really good thing. The other thing with respect to being a problem solver is I said the video doesn't have perhaps much monetary, real value, licensing value to me, but image-wise, it's golden, right? There we are, 65 years, 68 years of television history in North Texas, and now we're putting some of that on air. I mean, you can imagine the viewer comments we've got in just doing this project and some of the goodwill that we've bought ourselves with the help of UNT. So I guess finally, I said position your institution as the experts. Let's say that TV stations are experts in collecting video. Make yourselves the expert in preserving and archiving that video. You know, I will tell you just simply the scanning and searchability of those logbooks that I told you about that the university has done for us thus far is invaluable. I mean, we use that regularly in our news reporting effort. That's about it. I hope most of that made sense. I hope some of it was valuable to you. I think your endeavor is tremendous. I didn't really know about it until a few weeks ago when I was invited to speak here. They didn't tell me I was keynoting, by the way, until I got the agenda. So if there's one thankful guy, it's me up here that this is over now. Unfortunately, but clearly we're going to engage over the next couple of days.
For just a couple of questions, and then we'll move to break. Any questions for Brian? Brian?
What's your agreement going forward about the Born Digital stuff that your station's producing?
Yeah, and I think you asked what we're doing with it. What was your question?
Yeah, what's the agreement that you have with UNT for the Born Digital stuff that your station is producing?
We do not have an agreement with them, okay? I asked because I thought I'd get a question similar to this. Last year, 55,000 clips went into our digital archive. So we upgraded to a system moving into our new building. 55,000 clips, yeah, went into that archive. And that's how we did that. So I think, the relationship is there. I don't have an answer on the digital stuff. Thanks for bringing that up and making me nervous about that.
I didn't want to let you off easy.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, one more question.
So you're locally owned and operated, and I know that may be the case for some of the North Carolina news, TV news, but for a lot of our newspapers, they've been bought out by, national entities. Do you have any advice for talking with those groups? Because I know we've approached some of them in our institution in the past, and we've not really gotten a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah, so here's kind of maybe the good news to you for that. So we're not locally owned and operated.
Oh, okay.
We were, but in 1998 we were bought by NBC. So we're about, again, I wish you'd turn off the recorder, but we're about as not locally owned and operated as you can get, okay, along with other large broadcast networks operating television stations. So real quickly, and I'll think about this and we can talk, okay? I was at the station long before we were owned by NBC. I think that's part of this, along with some other people at the station, okay? So I have kind of a vested interest in this. That said, I will tell you, so I managed to negotiate NBC to get this done. Being first in, I think, is a lot to it. There's not a pattern for what to do here. There's not a template. We were kind of making it up, and I told NBC, I think this is what we should do, and I kind of got the checkoffs. To the extent that I got them to make a donation towards digitizing the archives, ultimately. Yeah, so it can be done. So
it's really about having a contact within the local staff.
I think so.
Okay.
And the other thing is, so a big company, right, is very focused on the costs of dealing with this, right? And the costs are significant. So if there's a way that you can position it as this local station will get benefit without the burden of cost, that's the win, okay? Does that help?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. That's it, right?
And then I saw Gail had a burning question as well. We're going to stop after Gail so that we can get everybody to a break.
Thank you. Yes, my question is about copyright. You said that NBC retains copyright, but it sounds like you're actually sharing it. Does Texas have a non-exclusive right, and that's why they get to produce and provide access to the news?
They do. I mean, they have the right, we're not going to charge them for access, and we will allow them to have copyright for works that they produce.
But they can provide access to the archives that they've digitized.
You can display the online in the portal. And I want to say thank you to Brian again, not only for doing this talk, which we talked him into, but he convinced the station to not only donate this archive, but to jumpstart the process of fundraising, not only through those fantastic videos, the dynamite videos that they produced, but they also gave a starter donation of $275,000 for the digitization of this archive. And it has been those donations, thanks to the work of NBC, but have continued to grow in. I think it's now hit $600,000.
A real quick thing there. So I was going out on a couple of calls with the Dean of External Relations and Special Projects, the librarian, and we would sit there, and I was shocked at how, I mean, it's like this, I guess, everywhere now, right? Everybody would say, well, that's very interesting. I'm very interested in that. Who else has given? And I'm like, well, you can be first, you know? But no, it's yeah. So it's like, we got to do something about this. So that's what got me kind of charged up, and I got the money from NBC. We put that out there. We were the first, and then they started to fall. Yeah, we were from 275 to now we're at 600. So that's what happened there. I was like, I can't believe you people won't jump into this.
It's happened very quickly. Please join me in giving another round of applause.